Sexual violence has such an enormous impact. Looking backward, I see how it influenced my behavior. It influenced my relationships with my friends and family. The way I think, the way I feel in my body. Victim shaming is a really big thing because how often don't we hear, was she drinking? What was she wearing? The fact that I walk around half naked, drunk, does not give anyone the right to touch my body. Sexual violence and rape is something that happens somewhere in a down, scary, dark alley with a cruel man, where in the end, oftentimes it's not a cruel man. And you tell a flight attendant, you have to sleep with me, or I'm not gonna fly with you anymore. What you're basically doing is give your body to me, otherwise I take away your income. It's treating someone else as an object. I believe speaking up allows other people to realize that they have the space to speak up as well. It is so needed that we bring a change, and the only way to bring that change is by breaking the taboos, by bringing it up, by having the uncomfortable conversations.
Hi, welcome back to Bold Moves, the podcast where we empower women to be bold, be brave, and be you. I'm Ayu, your host. Today's topic is a topic that we do not talk about it often. It is a taboo, a lot of shame and guilt around it. There is a lot of pressure around this topic, which is sexual violence. And this is a reminder that this episode is going to be a little bit sensitive and it may trigger some people out there. So please take care while you listen. So Nadine, my guest speaker, she has a background in politics and law. We talk about sexual violence in a way that is safe and educational space, where we talk about the definition of sexual violence, the gray area around it, the victim shaming. We also talk about consent, a lot of scenarios where sexual violence can happen. So without further ado, let's welcome Nadine. Hello, thank you so much for taking the time with me today to have this conversation. And I really appreciate it. You are in Netherlands, right? And I'm in Bali. How exciting is that? How are you today?
Hello, and thank you so much for having me today. I'm so excited to dive in with you. I'm feeling really great today. It's a little bit of a sunny day, which for you in Bali is a usual day. For us in the Netherlands, it's normally cold. How are you today?
I'm excited. I'm just very excited to do this with you, and knowing that I'm going to learn something from you a lot probably. So let's do it. As we will be talking about topic that is considered, I might say, taboo, and many will not talk about it. But I personally feel that it is necessary to talk about this. Like, from families, friends, anyone avoiding this kind of topic. But when you look at the data, the facts, it is huge. I Googled some before. So let me read it for the audience first. So one in 3 women worldwide have experienced physical and or sexual violence in their lifetime, predominantly by an intimate partner. Second one, approximately 1 in 8 women and girls experience rape or sexual assault before the age of 18. That's from UN Women Data and UNICEF. So as you can see, it is something that we need to talk about. But again, we don't talk enough about it. So as a context, right, for the audience, let's start with an understanding of sexual violence in your perspective, in your lens. What is it? What is sexual violence?
Thank you so much for the numbers. Of course I know the numbers by heart, but hearing someone else say it is always just such a... Yeah, it is so important to talk about it. And I would love to stretch that it's not a women's problem at all. It's an all of us problem, because you already tackled so many of the taboos where people think, oh, it's only
Mm-hmm.
poor women or it's only in different countries, but it happens everywhere. It's like one of the only things we have on this planet that does not discriminate in anything. And even if you're a man, you will indirectly be hurt by this violence.
Yes.
And on top of that, there are also men experiencing sexual violence. And to me, what sexual violence is not only rape, it's way bigger than that. It's also the rape culture that we talk about. But to make it really easy to understand, sexual violence is coerced or threatened sexual acts, which can be a man in a club hitting you on the bum up until rape in a marriage, up until another woman maybe telling you, oh, but that's just what men do. Why are you even
Yeah.
talking about this? Why do you want to fix it? Like, that's just what happens. Because comments like that are re-traumatizing or taking away the power for people to actually talk
Minimalizing the
about it.
experience. Yeah,
Yeah, it's
minimalizing.
minimizing the pain.
I just feel like thank you for saying that. Thank you for giving us the examples because the society, right? We just think sexual violence is the sexual violence. It's just rape. And yeah, that mainly. And it's actually so much more than that.
When we had COVID, this is controversial to say, but when we had COVID, we were all like, oh no! Where sexual violence is just as much a pandemic, in my perspective, as COVID, probably even worse, because so many people are getting affected by it daily. And I feel like we're underestimating the effects it has on people because someone who has been raped, oftentimes we're like, oh, but I forget about it and then it will be fine. And as someone who has experienced sexual violence in the past and has been healing from it, looking backwards now, I see how it influenced my behavior. It influenced my relationships with my friends and family. It influenced the way I think, the way I feel in my body, the way my health has been going. Like, sexual violence has such an enormous impact on someone who survives it, but it has also an enormous impact on the people around the person who survives it. And that's exactly why I say we're all falling victim of it. Because even if you're a man, like if your previous partner or your partner has experienced sexual violence, it will be brought into your energy field, into your life by the way she behaves in some situations. And that is not something to be ashamed of because she has been hurt and that goes into your nervous system. It goes into your brain. It impacts you all the time until you're actually ready to look at it. But if we say we're actually ready to look at it, we should never underestimate the amount of shame and guilt and victim shaming that there is as well, because we don't want to talk about it. We do not want that to be true. And it's always easier for every woman to be like, but that would never happen to me. And I chose to go to bed with this person because it's easier to convince yourself like, hey, I wanted this, than to say, oh, actually, I did not want this, but I was not capable of stopping it, so it happened. Because experiencing sexual violence is something that can happen even if you're the best person in giving your boundaries. It doesn't matter in a situation like that. Like, you can still fall victim to it, and then there's so much shame and guilt that you don't want to admit that it happens, where we really have to acknowledge it and look at it and to be able to start healing from it. And
we really do.
As a society, we have to start realizing, hey, we're all equal, which means that someone's no is a complete sentence. Because how often do you hear it also in couples like, yeah, my partner said no, but I know that once I convince her that she will have a good time, so I will push her a little bit, and then after a few times she will say yes. Because otherwise, I feel sad. And we laugh about it, or we're like, yeah, just convince her. Where if you really look at the facts, that's so wrong. Because if that person says no, it is a no.
Yeah, no means no, right? And you talk about your experience. Did it take away your confidence? Because you mentioned shame and guilt, right? How did it impact you the most? Like the big one?
That's a really good question and a really difficult one to answer because I honestly have no clue what is the biggest one. I think that as someone who has survived it, but also just for everyone who is listening, like I, on one side, have a background in human rights, and I wrote a master thesis on gender-based violence. So I really dove into the human rights side of it. And I am a Reiki master. I teach Kundalini yoga. I do oracle readings. So also being in the very spiritual field, like I've had a lot of conversations with a lot of people on sexual violence from those two perspectives. And seeing that has showed me how it affects other people. And that reflected back how it has affected me in my life. And honestly, the more I would say that I'm in a really, really, really good space right now. But at the same time, it still sometimes catches me off guard. And if I hear someone else talk about it, I can be like, oh, wait, but actually, and then things click and I'm like, but it actually, my behavior in this specific topic, for example, my behavior in this friendship was based on shame and not being able to open up because there was this big, huge feeling of I'm alone in what I've experienced. So,
but the truth is you are not, correct?
Yeah.
The truth is you see the numbers, you talk to, if you have a conversation with your friends or women around you, they might have had this experience as well. But again, this is something as a society that we, like you say, exactly what you said, the victim shaming. And then for us to be able to open up to say, hey, that happened to me. It feels like the shame, shame is the biggest energy, biggest kind of that shrink you. Why do you think so many people do not want to share or talk about it? Or is it because of victim shaming that you talked about before?
Personally, I think victim shaming is a really big thing because how often don't we hear, was she drinking? What was she wearing? Which totally is so ridiculous in my brain because the fact that I walk around half naked, drunk, does not give anyone the right to touch my body. But there is the misconception of like you have to protect yourself, and that's just really shows the inequality or like the not equal being of men and women. And on top of that, I feel like also just the not understanding of what sexual violence means, because a lot of us are still thinking in the boxes of sexual violence and rape is something that happens somewhere in a down, scary, dark alley with a cruel man. Where in the end, oftentimes it's not a cruel man. It's someone who kisses you the next morning, tells you I love you and goes to work because it's a romantic partner. Or maybe it's someone you're dating, or maybe it is someone who you're friends with. Like oftentimes there is so much more to the dynamic between a perpetrator and a survivor that it is difficult to be like, hey, you did this, because there's love for that person besides them having hurt you. And which doesn't mean that they're the biggest monster ever. I'm not justifying their behavior, but it is not that black and white. There's a lot of gray in between, and someone who has the best intentions can still hurt someone.
True. That's because there's a lot of the gray area that people, it's a misconception. People do not understand it. What I'm hearing is also, it's not only women's job. It's the whole society to understand sexual violence, to really understand what is it really about. I mean, what is okay and what is not okay. That's why you mentioned the gray area. Let's get deeper. This is interesting. Let's talk about the gray area, including, I think you mentioned consent, right? In your perspective, can you elaborate on what is a clear consent? Or is it something that is difficult to explain?
For me, consent is a really easy concept, but at the same time, it's one of the most difficult things to really understand and grasp. Because consent to me is a full body yes from both parties, which means that both people really feel like, oh, this is something I want to do. It makes them happy. It makes them feel like in their whole body just how beautiful sex can be. Because let's be honest, sex is super beautiful if it's shared between two people. But a lot of variations and variables in a situation can make consent difficult. One being people not fully understanding their own full body, yes. Second can be trauma responses, because sometimes when we're in bed with someone, before we go into bed, we're like, oh, I want this. And then maybe you feel like, oh, I don't want this anymore. But what our body does in a situation like that is not always being like, hey, I don't want this anymore. It's not that easy.
Yeah.
Some people, they freeze and they're not able to say no anymore. Some people, they fully dissociate and they're out of their body. They're not engaging anymore. Other people feel unsafe in the situation and think, oh, but if I just get this over with, at least there's no violence. So it is really important with consent that it's not only at the beginning of a sexual interaction, but it's also something we keep checking in on. Like, hey, are you still having fun? Hey, and just feel the energy. But we also really have to be aware to listen to the other person's body and to be present in that moment and not be performing like, oh, I saw this in this porn video and I have to do this. Not like, I have to perform, I have to do this, but
pressurized. Yeah.
But really listen to your own body in the moment. And from listening to your own body, looking at the person you're engaging with and being like, hey, is this person still looking like it's a full body yes? Or should I just take my distance for a moment and be like, hey, are you still feeling this or do you want to stop? And I feel like that is where we get like the gray area around consent, because this is such a difficult thing to prove, especially with people who are then you get situations where oftentimes generalizing, it's the woman who says like, hey, I got raped because this was not consensual. And the man who is like, oh, he had a great time, let's do it again, because he didn't notice. And that is because they were not present in the moment and they were not engaging in a way of, I'm enjoying this, I'm not enjoying it. It was more a performative or a freezing moment.
Performance. Yeah. And thank you for explaining that. I mean, I didn't think that way before, because when you say you freeze in the middle, like you said yes, and then, I changed my mind, but I'm in the situation where shit, I can't say no anymore. Or, oh, what's going to happen if I say no, if I don't want it now? So as a woman, you think about safety, right? You think about, am I wrong? But it's just so much to think about, and it happens quickly. It happens, your brain thinking, if your body says no, oh, how am I going to say this to the other person? And that's why I agree with you. That's why it becomes the gray area. Get what you're saying. It has to be both yeses, right? All along, all the way. So we kind of have to understand our body. And that's why you said it's the whole society. It's not just the woman or the men. I mean, it's both, to understand that it is a clear yes. Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely. But I do want to make a really important nuance that even if you know your body really well, even if you are fully aware of your body, it can still happen that you get sexually violated or raped, because you giving your boundaries is a clear no, but someone cannot listen to that and you can freeze. And that is absolutely nothing someone can blame you for. That is not your responsibility. If you are in a situation where you're having sex and you freeze, it is still sexual violence against you, even if you don't say no.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and on that, about saying no, I just had a story from, friends that told me about, they are flight attendants. So in this kind of like industry, I heard about this story many times. It's not just for my friends, but a friend of friends. And so a woman flight attendant sometimes can be pressured into get into bed to be able to fly with the captain or I'm not saying all pilots, yes? Let's just highlight that part. It's in any workplace. So I think in that part, right, it's our society again. But what's your take on that? Because if you don't say yes to get into bed with me, as a pilot or whichever, then I'm not going to fly with you. So she has less flight time, which is less income. And I don't know, what's your take on that? I think it's so wrong in many levels. But again, there is no safe area, I asked her, can you say that to your supervisor? Can you say that to how you complain about that? Not really. And I was like, wow, so this is again the whole society, like not making it safe, even in that kind of situation as a flight attendant. If it was my situation, it is very difficult. I can just walk away, right? What's your take on that in the work industry?
For me, stories like this really break my heart, but stories like this also really show me how it is a big societal problem, because this is not the part where you have to sleep with the person, but the part where you have no choice and there's this pressure is sexual violence in itself. That really shows how embedded these ideas are in our society and how our cultural norms and societal expectations play a part in it. And this is exactly why I say it is an all of us problem. So that just shows how somewhere inside of us, or inside of a lot of people, we still don't believe that men or women are equal. And we believe that we have a right to take over someone's body, because in the end, that's what you do. If you are a pilot and you tell a flight attendant, like, you have to sleep with me, or I'm not going to fly with you anymore, what you're basically doing is give your body to me, otherwise I take away your income, which is not treating someone else as your equal. It's treating someone else as an object.
Exactly. That's spot on. And if I was in that situation, that is difficult situation, because if that's your job for years and then someone has a power over you to take that away from you, and you have no safe kind of like person, or you cannot even tell this, and you work in somewhere, you should have the power to kind of like, look, this happened to me and that is not okay. And then it's just, for me, it's really not a safe space for women. And maybe it's changing now. But again, the story that I've heard, I was like, wow, it's just like, I'm flabbergasted. Like, really, it happened like that in that kind of like working situations. And I believe a lot of people have their stories at work as well.
And I feel like it also shows the complexity of the situation we're looking at, because this is just one example, right, of someone having this as a flight attendant, but in so many places this is happening, and also in intimate relationships. Like, if you're married to someone and they rape you, but the next day you see them with their children and they tell you love them, like, it gets so complicated and people get so much shame and guilt. And how often don't we say, oh, but if someone is physically or sexually abusive to you, just leave them. And that just completely overlooks the complexity of the situation, because I read one day, like, it takes on average a woman 7 times to leave an abusive relationship. And in those 7 times, there are a lot of women who die by the hands of their abuser before they even have the opportunity to leave. And I personally believe that a lot of people saying, oh, but they should just leave, oh, but they should just say no, to me, that just shows that it's easier to see yourself as someone who this could never happen to, than to look at the real situation and having to admit the fact that you could be the person who is getting hurt, but also to having to admit that you can be the person who has hurt someone in the past. And that again shows that it is a society problem, and it is a problem that, in my opinion, we cannot just fix with law. We cannot just fix with giving hope to survivors. We really have to start at the roots, which means, for me, going inside of yourself and seeing, which beliefs do I have? Which desires do I have? How do I feel? When do I feel safe? And building up that relationship with yourself in order to then be able to bring that back into society and challenge the things that are unfair in society, like the fact that we say, oh, but man will be man. If he touches your butt in the club, yeah, that's what you're asking for by wearing that dress. Like, to be able to really challenge that without being put away as some angry woman, you have to be so grounded in yourself. And then again, sometimes it just makes me angry that me as a woman, I've experienced that as well, where I would be like, hey, this is not right. People would just look at you and be like, oh, but you're just emotional. See, that's just a woman. You have hormones. And I'm like, but even if I go about it and I completely rage, it's not okay. And I have absolutely all the right to tell you it's not okay in whatever way it is.
You call they call you being angry because it's just not okay, and just because the whole society think relax, it's just that. But if that's not okay with me, right? Like, why I cannot be able to say that's not okay? Because the whole society is like, it's just that. The minimalizing culture in this sexual violence is huge. I have to say that. It's like as simple as what were you wearing in the question normally in the situation of rape or sexual violence. The question is, what were you wearing at that time? And I was like,
and a question is just enabling that behavior to continue. Because as long as we are asking those questions like, what were you wearing? Were you drunk? And kind of like reversing the problem, we're looking at how can we prevent it from how can we make this woman like save herself, instead of we're looking at, hey, why is generalized this man showcasing this behavior? Why do we believe this is okay? Because that is the root of the problem we have to get to. Like, why are these behaviors showcased in society, and how can we stop that? Which beliefs is there? Which is, in the end, maybe sometimes a belief of I, as a man, or I, as a perpetrator, am worth more and my desires are more important than the other person's. No. Which is, if you like look at it from that perspective, it makes me so angry, because I'm like, who in his right mind would think, oh, but my desire is more important than you saying no?
mm-hmm.
And it happens so often. And it happens all the time.
That is so, oh my God, that hits. It's just when you said that, I mean, yes, I think of this a lot of times, but to be able to share this, like in this kind of conversation, it's just, it's make me fiery a little bit. Like there is anger a little bit. That comes through my whole body when we talk about it. It's just, so basically what you're saying is we need to start it at home. We need not just the school, not just the university, not just the society outside. I really think we need to talk about it more to our children, boys and girls, not just the girls.
But I feel like we need those conversations in like people of every age, because I've spoken with women, for example, who were 50, who were like, actually, I always have sex with my husband because I thought it was just part of being married. I've never really sat with myself and thought about, do I want this or do I not want this? I just did it because it was normal, which is such a big generational thing as well, because I feel like the generations before us really, there was not talk about consent. There was not talk about what do I want. It was just, yeah, that's part of life. We do that because I'm married. So I feel like, yes, it's super important to talk about those things with children, but also before we can talk about it with our children and before we can have those big conversations about consent, we ourselves from every age have to understand our own inner world. And like, when do I have sex because I wanted to? How do I even feel when I wanted to? And that is such a big start. And I also feel like, as a human rights lawyer, I would love nothing more than we have more human rights treaties protecting women from this. But there is such a big gap between reality and life and the legal reality that I'm like, we need to work so much more on what is in reality right now, what is living right now in families, in communities, in schools. And that's exactly why I decided to write a book on sexual violence.
Tell me about your book. I was about to ask though. Tell me about your book. We want to know about your book.
I am currently writing a book. It's going to be out in a few months, actually. It's crazy. Yes. I'm so excited.
I'm excited for you too.
The first chapter is really going to be about what is sexual violence, and it's going to use human rights and human rights treaties to really figure out for yourself, like, what do you feel like is okay and is not okay, and why do you feel that way? So I will be using examples of human rights that we've agreed on, but then put it into question and make people like do journal prompts and really work with it. Like, what do I feel is right and what do I feel is not right? According to what is sexual violence, which boundaries are there, what is consent? The second part is all going to be about prevention, which is something we've already spoken about. Like, how do we make sure that it happens less and less on a personal level, but more importantly, on a societal level? And then lastly, it's going to be more from an holistic health perspective of like, how can we restore that balance inside of ourselves after having experienced sexual violence or being indirectly influenced by sexual violence? And the whole book is really written from a perspective of not me giving my opinion. That's really important to me because I do not have the answers. But the thing that I can do is give a lot of examples in order for the person who's going to read the book to find their own answers. Because if I tell you, you have to see it like this, you're not going to change your behavior. But if I challenge you to question your own behavior and to find what is right and wrong inside of yourself, you will change your behavior and you will act accordingly. So it's going to be a really practical guide for you to just go through it. It's for men, women, every age. Like, how do I feel about sexual violence? How can I prevent it from happening? And how can I make sure that I'm feeling better and I do not have any negative experience anymore? And I do not have any triggers or any health issues, mental health issues, emotional issues after having experienced sexual violence.
That is wonderful, and I want to celebrate it with you actually. And you're doing a big contribution to this topic with your book, right? And I'm proud of you. I don't know about you, but I am proud of you already. Please tell me when the book is out. And this is exactly why I agreed to have this conversation with you, because I feel like this is a little part of our contribution to talk about it, to be open about it, because it needs to be done. I mean, yes, a lot of people talk about it, but I don't really come across it. When you open Instagram, when you open YouTube, you don't really come across this kind of topic because we avoid this kind of topic. It's scary, but again, we need to talk about it. And that's why, congratulations on your book. And I'm so excited. So in a few months, yeah, it will be out.
In a few months, it will be out. I think 3 months.
Wonderful. Let's move onto healing part of the sexual violence, right? In your perspective again, how people who experienced sexual violence can begin rebuilding their trust and feel safe again?
I feel like it's a really personal journey for everyone. So I really want to point out that everyone's journey towards trusting themselves again will be different based on the physical problems you have, but also based on your brain chemistry. Because for some people, doing trauma therapy and EMDR will really, really help you to make sense out of it. I've done EMDR as well, and it worked wonders for me.
What is that EMDR? Like
EMDR, it's rapid eye movement therapy. It's like a really common trauma therapy. And at the same time, it wasn't until I started doing holistic health work that I really started to feel better, because when I did the trauma therapy and the talk therapy, it was a lot in the mind, and the mind became at ease and I started feeling way better. But the stress and the tension was still in my body, and there was still like hormonal disbalances and a lot of tension and a lot of blocked energy as well. And by doing a lot of yoga, by doing a lot of energy healings, by doing a lot of wound cleansings and all type of spiritual work, I started feeling better. But personally, I really believe that the biggest thing you can do for yourself is give yourself time and space to just be with you. And little by little and step by step, start listening to your body and start rebuilding that relationship of trust with your own body again. Because I've done it as well. We run away and we do everything not to feel. So you can either run away into substances, into always being busy and working 24/7, into always being with friends and partying. But it isn't until you return back to nature, you sit with yourself and you cry for hours.
So
Because
instead of numbing it, instead of running away from it, you turn to face it, the
yeah,
pain, and then sit with the pain. Is that what you're trying to say?
absolutely. And I do have to say, like, I meditate daily and I love meditating. But when people ask me, like, oh, did meditation help you? All I can say is, yes, it did. But it wasn't an easy fix because I feel like everything holistic health, it's not like a pill you take and it will get better. The first year I did my meditations and I did them daily, I would just sit and sob. I felt like shit. But it is the fact that you keep going and then little by little it goes better and then you will feel great for a little while and then you have to face it again from a new perspective. And I feel like that is a really big part of going into the spiritual world and going into holistic health is realizing there is nothing that is broken. There is nothing to be fixed. It is just being able to witness all parts of yourself, to hold all parts of yourself in love and allow everything to be there.
Well, look, first of all, thank you for sharing your experience. I know it must be hard to talk about it, but you are being really brave talking about this. And I really, really, really appreciate that you're sharing this because I believe the audience, the listeners who will be listening to this, I believe you see the data, the numbers, and I think they will find it helpful. And then you mentioned the holistic and the spirituality can support recovery. I do believe in that. I really do believe in that as well. So it's not just like one thing that helps you. I believe it's very difficult for us to go through it. And it's not just like, okay, it's not just progressing that way. It's fluctuated. It's ups and downs and it comes and goes. That's the thing that we need to understand as a society, that recovery is not just getting better in 6 months you will be better. That's fine. But it takes times and yourself to do the work and to be open. Thank you so much for telling us that story. I mean, sharing that. And about how to support, right? Let's talk about the healing part and then how to support friends or loved ones who open up about their experience. Because sometimes for people who do not know what to do when someone says, instead of victim shaming, saying the things that we've been hearing growing up, what's your suggestion on that? How to support our loved ones or friends that have been through it?
Thank you so much for this question because I really, really feel like it's such an important thing to talk about. My biggest advice I can give is just witness, because oftentimes what we do when we see someone move through big things like this is we want to fix it for them. We want to help them. We want to give them solutions. We want to give them tools. We want to tell them that everything will be better. And I personally believe that you allow someone to really help themselves by being there unconditionally, just sitting and listening to them talk, not responding with advice, not telling them I understand, because respectfully, you do not. Like, even if you've experienced sexual violence yourself, everyone's experience is a little bit different. So to say, I understand you, da 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 da, or, oh, we can do this together, let me give you a solution, it's not gonna help. Allow them to just be, to be witnessed, to not be alone, but to just share and let it out. And then tell them, hey, I'm here if you want to talk. Hey, if you need advice, if you need support, if you need anything, ask for it. And if you see that someone is not asking for it, just remind them, like, hey, I'm here. If you want to talk, if you just want to share, if you need support, I'm here. But don't go into this role of, I will save you, I will protect you, I will do this for you. Just witness. Because I feel like in being witnessed in our emotions and our mess, we're not alone, but we're also still having the control and not having the feeling of like, okay, I shared and now this person is taking over everything in my life and telling me what to do. And I feel that it's also really important to understand afterwards that, yes, you now know this person's story, but it's not your pain. It's not your story. Please be respectful. Don't talk about it with everyone. Don't use it against them as in, oh yeah, but it's so heavy for me to listen to you talk about this topic. It's not about you in that moment. It's really about that other person.
Oh, thank you for saying that. It's not about you, it's about the other person. Oh my God. Yeah, that is such a good one. And then just let them be without you pressurizing whenever question that you might have. Just let the other person to tell you because they trust you at that point. And not being the expert. Let's fix it. Let's fix it already. I mean, I just want you to hear me out. I just want to share it with you. The victim shaming is really huge. And sometimes in society, we don't realize we say things like that about victim shaming. Thank you for that. It's already 40 minutes that we've been talking. It's been amazing. I didn't realize it. But well, before we wrap up, right? I have 2 more questions. That's it. I'm not going to take more of your time. But again, I really enjoy the conversation because your energy also, I think because you do a lot of spirituality and the holistic things, your energy is very calming. And
Thank you.
and your knowledge, because you had the background in politics and law and all that, it's just very clear to me, the question that I asked you, and it's just because I'm curious about the whole topics and we need to talk about it more. But your presence it's perfect. I mean, it's very calming, and the way you speak, and you said a lot of truth as well, which some people wouldn't say, which I love. So the question is, I feel a lot of silence around this. And as you know, especially for teenage girls, even though they have had that experience, they will not say it. And why do you think why do you think speaking up is important? Why do you think it matters? And how it matters for the victims?
Personally, I believe that me speaking up allows other people to realize that they have the space to speak up as well. Because as someone who has experienced it, I've kept quiet for a really long time. I did not want to talk about it. And me writing this book, me doing this work is not for me. I would rather live a life where I would never talk about it again. But at the same time, I can see a reality where it is so needed that we bring a change, and the only way to bring that change is by breaking the taboos, by bringing it up, by having the uncomfortable conversations, and by reminding people that they are part of the problem, part of the pain, part of the cause. So I feel like it's really important if you have the strength and the calm and the ability to speak up, because there's always going to be someone else who is a survivor and has never talked about it, and who might feel a little less alone, or who might feel heard and seen, or who might find the strength to actually start healing themselves. So it is absolutely not for myself that I am speaking up, but it is for hoping that there is going to be one person who listens to this podcast and feels seen and feels safe enough to open up, and who feels ready to understand that it was not their fault and there is a way out of the triggers they're living. And me writing this book is not because I have all the answers. It is to open up this conversation for people to find a solution together, because we really have to stand hand in hand together to turn this situation around. And the only way for us to be aware of a problem is for us to speak it into existence and to not look away anymore. Because by looking away and by keeping quiet, we stay in a world where people are able to do all of those cruel things to other people.
Speak into the existence, and thank you so much for that. And then you are doing a great, amazing thing by writing this book. I think it's an honor as well to kind of like read your book, because I think it is really needed. Speaking up matters. No matter, you can talk to the people that you can trust. You can write it down. You can speak up to I don't know, your work environment, your school environment. So one last thing before I let you go. I love asking this to my guest, and for you, it's what's your final message to women listening out there who are silently battling with this experience? If you can have a conversation, one message you can give to the woman out there.
That's a beautiful question. It actually made me a bit emotional. I feel the most important thing is you're not alone. It's not your fault. And you do not have to carry this guilt and shame of someone else's actions because it was someone else doing that to you. You did not deserve that. You can learn from it, but it is never someone else doing that to you that will show your strength. It's you waking up and you going on that shows your strength. But please understand that it was never your fault and you're allowed to talk about it for as long as you need. You're allowed to run away from it for as long as you need, as long as you do what is right for you, and as long as you believe that you really, really deserve all the help and all the support and all the love from professionals, from your friends, from your sisters, from your family, from your romantic partner, because your body is yours and you decide what happens with that. And nobody else has a right to decide that for you.
Thank you so much for your wonderful message. I really appreciate that. I really appreciate you. And thank you again for the whole beautiful session we're talking about. You bring out the topic about this and the victim shaming. You said it, you give us examples. It's not just women's job, it's the whole society. It's starting not just for boys and girls, it's for any age. And I'm looking forward to read your book. Thank you for this session.
Thank you so much for this beautiful conversation. And thank you for having this amazing podcast for all women out there.